Hey guys, I wanted to do a really short, quick update on my picking and my recovery. Um, it's finals week at grad school, so that kind of means it's Hell Week. And as you may or may not be able to see from my actual face, shit has went off the rails. I am extremely frustrated and disappointed by this, although not shocked, because this cycle of like starting my recovery journey and then failing a couple weeks into it is super normal. It's not new at all. It's something that I do all the time. I think that I'm not doing a good job at using my coping mechanisms that aren't picking. It's like I have so much stuff going on in my life and so much so much responsibility and so many things to think about and so many assignments and work and internships and all that stuff that I didn't have time to really I know I talked about it and I conceptualized those coping mechanisms with my therapist, but I didn't have time to utilize those, and I didn't have time to make them a reality before starting finals in this very stressful time. So I think that was a big failing. I took a really long weekend in Vancouver last weekend over Memorial Day, and I was gone from Friday afternoon to Monday afternoon. And even though it was really good and it was, relaxing and fun and rejuvenating and all that, it surprised me because I was picking so much while I was there. And I'm just thinking this is not the time. I think what was going on was I wasn't doing a very good job at, I was sort of freaking out that I was taking the time off because I knew I had all of these things looming over me. I'm trying to find a new job that's more consistent. At the time, I was trying to find a new internship. The quarter's ending. I know that I have this huge paper. I have these group projects. So I think that all really stressed me out, thinking oh, this is the worst time that I could have, minus this week being literally the worst time I could have taken off. Last week was a really bad time for me to take off 4 days. And I talked to some people and they say you need this. This is how you recharge before the last push. And to an extent that's true, but also I'm the kind of person that just worries a lot. So it also really stressed me out, and I think that subconsciously, very subconsciously underneath everything, I was picking because I was I'm enjoying myself, I'm putting off all these things so that I can recharge, but I felt guilty about doing that, and I felt anxious that I would be overwhelmed when I came back. And I am, and I think I would have been regardless of whether I took that time or not. I'm not a bit of a procrastinator. I am a true procrastinator in that I allow the time crunch and stress of quick time constraints to motivate my work, which is just a very honest realization about my personality that I don't but it's also one that I feel is very deep-seated in my personality, and I'm not really sure how to go about changing that. And it's good just to be honest with yourself and recognize that okay, I know that I have 2 weeks to do this, but I know the majority of the work is going to be done in the last 3 days before it's due. And by God, I can crank out some fucking work when I'm under pressure like that. I feel I put out my best work. For the most part, I put out my best work. I'm certainly more motivated to do intense bouts of work whenever I'm under a hard deadline like that. So anyway, what happened was I started picking my scalp, which is a really thing that I've been doing the past year or so, to the max that I didn't do all of these years picking. It was just like all of a sudden I had an epiphany that like, oh, I can pick this, and the more I pick it, the more oils that I'm putting in the pores, the more the pores are making these tiny little bumps and blackheads. And also, there's no physical repercussions of this because no one can see that I'm not scabbed or red. Like, you can't see that. It does make my hair very greasy, but I started picking my scalp, and then the floodgates just opened. The skin on my face looks really bad right now. It hasn't looked this bad in a minute, maybe a couple months. So, I don't know, it was strange. My back was healing, and I started picking my back. I started picking the back of my thighs. I started picking my scalp, like I said, so much. And it's just kind of continued through this week. I don't have time to to do a lot of self-care stuff, and when I do take self-care stuff in these times of very like crunch times and times of hard deadlines, I feel extremely guilty about taking that time. Like this morning, I have a 10-page paper due tomorrow, and this morning I knew that I needed to get work done, and I woke up at like 9, and I actually had a dream that was extremely hard for me to deal with and very disturbing. It had a lot of elements that I won't go into, but really fucked me up. And like sometimes you wake up with dreams like that, and it's hard to recover. And so I allowed myself like a couple of hours just to sort of, wake up slowly and enjoy my time, and read a little bit in bed, and then I end up feeling like shit about it, even though I know that it was important for me to like get the work done that I did this afternoon. When I am under these hard deadlines, it's hard to take time without doing work that I don't feel guilty about. So, I don't know. I'm done next week. I'm gonna take a week vacation break in Ohio back with my family, and I'm gonna be with my mom. And going back with my family can be a little bit stressful. Things can crop up and topics we don't want to talk about, and just being back in my hometown, which I'm not crazy about, being away from my friends and my partner, and all of those things can kind of wear on you a little bit, even though it's a happy time to be back with your family. So I don't know if my picking's gonna get a little bit better over that break or not. I actually skipped my therapy session on Tuesday, because I didn't feel well, and I knew I had so much work to do that driving up there and doing it and driving back is about a 2.5 hour, 3 hour excursion, especially if there's lunch involved. It's going to take me longer than that. So I skipped it, and that was probably not a good idea. But I felt for the workload that I had, it was the right decision. So next week I'll have an appointment, and then I won't have an appointment for a week or two because I'll be off. I'll be in Ohio. So hopefully my therapist can give me ways to get back on track. I don't know if she'll be shocked to hear that this is happening to me. Probably not. Right, because when you talk about addiction counseling, 1 to 2 weeks is like the point where you break down and you relapse. And this is a relapse. This is what this is. Yeah, I'm very disappointed in myself, like I said, but not shocked. It feels like super familiar to be in this spot, and this overcoming this feeling of disappointment and failure is how I deal with this has a lot to do with whether I'm going to be any good in my road to recovery. Because if I choose to let this get me down, it will just continue on the cycle. But if I choose to do to forgive myself and be easy on myself, then I can move forward. So that's the update for right now. I'm picking a lot. I'm very frustrated. I'm trying to find forgiveness in myself, trying to find advice from my therapist next week, and hoping to bounce back. Yeah, that's what's going on. Okay, bye.